Hey, you gorgeous human beings. Welcome to my latest episode of Making Babies and Making Bank. I have a little bit of a secret to tell you. This is my take two. There are sometimes advantages of us not going live. I blame it on the nerves because I am really excited to be introducing you to a lady that I've followed for, I think, over 5 years now. I first got my eyeballs on this woman when I joined B School. And any of you who know my story know that that was the first online course that I ever invested in. And it's the course that I say made the biggest difference to my life. And so whilst we were in the group, I was kind of looking around at who was making the moves and doing their thing. And this lovely lady was one of these people, and I was very much at that stage like, when I grow up I want to be like her. So it is a great honor to be able to introduce you guys to the incredible Kate Northrup, author of Money, a Love Story, and her latest book, Do Less. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Kate up on screen.
Right.
As if by magic, welcome, welcome, welcome. So the only question that I ask everybody when we are doing these interviews is to tell me about your family setup, and then we just go from there.
Great. So I live with my husband, Mike, and he and I run our company together. And we have a 19-month-old little girl named Ruby and a 4-year-old named Penelope. And Penelope is in preschool 5 days a week, and Ruby is in daycare 4 days a week.
Okay. So how long have you been in business?
Well, technically I got started in business like 18 years ago, but in the current iteration, 9 years.
Okay. So how big of a deal was it when you and Mike decided that you wanted to start a family? Were you scared, or was it just like, okay, this is cool, we got it sorted?
Yeah. I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I always knew that was like the one thing that was for sure. And so it wasn't really an issue of when or if, it was when. And so working for ourselves, we knew we could choose to do it whenever, but we also knew we wouldn't have any paid family leave or any kind of financial support. Like we would need to either put aside the money or come up with systems within our company so that revenue continued to keep coming in. And so, yeah, it was definitely something that we gave a lot of thought to. However, the nice thing about pregnancy is it does take 9 months. So, so there was some time to think those things through. I don't think we thought that through too much before I got pregnant. It was during the pregnancy. And then honestly, like we just didn't know what it was going to be like. And so it was a lot of figuring it out once the baby came.
Did you have your peer group? Were you the first of your peers to have a baby, or had you got other friends and family that had done it who were in business for themselves?
Okay, so who were in business for themselves? That's a different question. So yes, I had a lot of local friends who had had kids. Did I have anybody who had kids and was running a business? Like a few.
Okay.
A few. But I really looked to, what was interesting? Somehow, I don't know but somehow I ended up getting pregnant at the same time as a lot of my friends who were business owners. So there were like 6 of us who were just doing it at the same time and like texting each other wildly, figuring it out. So I felt very supported, but not necessarily by anybody who was farther along, just by a bunch of peers where we were all just like, okay, let's figure this out.
That's magic. I remember when I got pregnant with my first because it wasn't my first, it was my second. So the first I'd had maternity leave from my business, and the second I didn't have that security. So I just remember, and I didn't have passive income at that time, or it was very kind of, I hadn't got my funnels sorted out. So I was really like, I don't know how long I'm going to have off. And in the UK, when you have your baby, it's normal to take a year off work. That's kind of socially acceptable. Whereas I know in the States, actually maternity leave, it's normal to go back up to work after 6 weeks.
It's standard to go back to work after 6 weeks.
Yes, standard, not normal.
So weird. Yeah. It's totally not normal, but it's standard. Yeah,
so what was your expectation? How much time did you have off? What were you thinking about that side of things?
So we had mapped it out so that I would take 3 months off, and my husband was kind of like, you know, a little bit on, a little bit off. I mean, we worked from home, so he was there. He was working more than I was, but not a ton. So we had that mapped out. We had our passive revenue sources set up for that. And then, but the second time, so 3 months for the first, with like zero childcare, nothing, like just we were doing that. And then we had a nanny who started 10 hours a week after that. And so until our daughter was 9 months old, we had 10 hours a week of childcare. And then after that, she started daycare, like, I don't know, probably 20 hours a week at 9 months old. I have never worked full time again after having kids.
So how many hours a week do you work?
Like 24 to 30.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you? Were you already working part-time before you had children?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, during pregnancy I was, because I was so tired. I couldn't work really that much. I just couldn't, I don't know, I just couldn't do it. So I don't really, isn't it funny? It's like a long time ago now. I don't really remember how much I worked before I got pregnant. I know my husband and I were sort of like working all the time. Like, you know, we were living that laptop lifestyle where it was like, sometimes we were working at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, but sometimes on a Tuesday afternoon, we were at the movies. I mean, we had like the ultimate, we didn't know. We were living the life. I had no idea. But it was great.
Do you still feel like that? Do you still feel like you are living the life?
I do. It's harder now with kids. I mean, I have so much less freedom because I'm a mother who, like, I'm really about routine and structure. And I just notice in my kids' behavior and well-being how things start to unravel if I don't keep to, I wouldn't call myself rigid, but I'm very structured, which I never had before having kids. Like, I struggled with even a meditation practice because I wanted to do something totally different every day. And so now having kids, it's like, you know, I wake up at 5:30, I do my workout, then I make the breakfast, then I make the lunches, then I have my lemon water and my celery juice. Like, it's just like boom, 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 boom. And I think that I feel like I'm living the life in a very different way, in that structure and routine, while I do it for my kids, it really holds me. Like, I just feel so calm and I really like it. I really like it. And, you know, I get to work with my husband and, you know, and my kids are adorable and we're happy. Yeah.
So talk to me, because I'm making the assumption based on what you said, that your goals and vision for life and business have changed significantly since you had children.
No. They've always been the same. My goal and vision was always to be a business owner so that I could have as much freedom and flexibility as I wanted to be with my kids. I thought, okay, nope, you're right. I thought that it was so that I could be a stay-at-home mom. And then I had a baby and I was like, oh, hell no.
This is hard.
I was just like, no, I mean, at 5 weeks postpartum, I was ready to work again, believe it or not. And I think that part of that was avoidance. I think honestly, part of it was like, oh my God, this is so hard. I want to just go back to working because that's so much easier than this. It was very hard for me to slow down to the speed of motherhood.
Oh, this is really interesting because I remember with both Coco and Aluna, so Coco is now 6 and Aluna is 3, there's this mass of creativity. So they say, well, it's the sacral chakra that's activated when you're pregnant and when you're birthing, which is our chakra for creativity. And I know that a lot of my clients, when they get pregnant, the fear is that everything is going to dry up. And every single time, without exception, my clients and myself have this huge boost of inspiration and creativity. And the babies slept. So I was like, I think at 3 weeks, I was a bit like, oh, I wonder if people fancy coming on a retreat. And everything was done on my phone, Airbnb booked, notice in the group. I had my biggest month in business the month that Aluna was born.
That's cool.
And it wasn't that I needed it, but it was just there. It was just so easy for me. Like, I love that ease. Sometimes I'm like, let's go back to that ease so I'm not in that push energy.
Well, and I think it's the ease. And then also there's something about being in that space where you are so beholden to this little baby's needs that you make such good use of your time. Like, that's how I felt. Mike and I, despite working less than half the amount we had ever worked before, made the same amount of revenue that first year of parenthood, working less than half the amount of time because we just got so efficient.
Yes.
There was just no screwing around. And now with the kids in childcare 4 days a week, even though I only work, 24 to 30 hours, I'm way less efficient than I used to be. I mean, I'm still on it, but not like I was when I had a newborn.
Can you talk to me about the dynamic between you and Mike? So are you 50-50% partners?
We are. Yes.
So how does that work then? Do you lead in different roles? How does that actually work in practice?
So Mike and I informally went into business together in 2012. And then in 2013, when he asked me to marry him, we actually drew up a contract. So before we got married, we had a business agreement in writing. And that was really great because prior to that, I had been in a business partnership with my mom where we hadn't put anything in writing. And I tell that story in Money, a Love Story. And my mom and I are like incredibly good friends, so it's all public and fine. But I had a little trauma from it. Yeah. And so we wrote up an agreement. And so, so it's basically like all the assets from before. I mean, it's essentially a business prenup. And so everything that's been created since that point, we are 50-50 owners of, with the exception of like my books, because it's, but from our, business. And Mike is really more like the operations guy. So he is in charge of hiring and firing and tech systems and workflow and all that stuff. And really largely I'm responsible for the content and for connecting with people. So those are my two jobs. A little bit marketing strategy for sure. I love marketing strategy, but I really we try to keep me in creativity and connecting. And then there's somebody else for everything else. And Mike kind of oversees and manages all the everything else.
And because you've been in business for so long, I'm assuming that you knew that they were your strengths when you formed that partnership. So it was
it was clear. I mean, we've done a dance for sure. We've done a dance. Mike for a long time was actually taking consulting clients because he has an incredible strategic mind. So he did that. He had a podcast of his own. We've definitely been in different iterations of what are we doing and who's doing what. I would say right now we're in a really sweet spot. We've also come to realize we need a third party. So We need a third party in leadership with us who's not like a co-owner of the company, but who's really in on the vast majority of those conversations. Because when it's just Mike and I, it's not good for our marriage. So we recently brought in a new third party person, and it's great. It's great for us to be held accountable to somebody who's not each other.
So is that like a COO?
Right now, that's not the role. That's not what the role is called. Mike is sort of more the COO, and then this third party is more, right now, she's more of a project manager. And because what ended up happening is Mike and I sort of ended up managing projects together. This was a little messy. So I would say like it continues to evolve. We continue to be better and get better, and we just stay in open conversation about it. And we have a great couples therapist who helps.
Okay, because it's really interesting. I feel it like right now in myself as a woman. I'm now 41, and I feel my evolution. And what is really interesting about the online world is that whilst there are some amazing female role models, it's also kind of quite masculine. And that drive and the 7 figures and this is success and all of that is very, very push, which for my background, which is advertising and sales and all of that, it's been amazing. But I now feel called to be a different person in both business, marriage, and all of my relationships. And that really is about integrating my yin. And so that's calling for a whole new level of relationship, not only with my clients, but also with my husband. And so I'm curious, with you, are you able to clearly define the different seasons that you have been in? Or has it kind of been more flow and you and Mike have just grown together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly for the last 5 years of my life, my time has been marked by pregnancy and birth. Because I got pregnant just about this time in 2014. So yes, there are different seasons, though the truth is pregnancy and birth have and in sort of those early stages of motherhood are such a yin time. And so I think that this season has been about Mike more holding the structure. Also just in terms of our personality styles, I'm very like my masculine is very well developed. But I am not my best self when I'm leading from that place 24/7. I don't think that I do my best work. I'm really good at it, but it's the difference between being like in a zone of excellence versus a zone of genius. So, every month feels a little bit different, but we sort of grow and evolve and change together. Last year, Mike was really, really ill for 9 months. So from basically the day Ruby was born, our second, through, which was April of 2018 through January, February 2019, he was very ill and at times completely incapacitated. And so during that time, that was a really weird moment of having a newborn and then also our company and then also essentially no partner able to support. And so it sucked. And but it was terrible. And it also taught me of where I could lean into softness of support in other areas of my life. And it created a lot of beautiful interconnectivity in my extended community beyond my nuclear family. And that's been powerful because we all need that.
Yeah. So what his illness required of you was to seek out more and reach out and ask for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had just written a book about that. So it was kind of hilarious. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Talk to me about the rise of you operating from your zone of excellence to zone of genius. What was the call? How did you know that you were being called to step up? And how did you identify what your zone of genius was?
Yes. So that continues to be an evolutionary process. We're already in conversations for 2020 about what are our projects and how can more be taken off my plate so I can be more in that place of creativity and moving my methodologies forward, because I thrive, like, I just created a do less planner, for example, to go. It's like the philosophies of my book and my methods all in a operationalized handbook to use all year. And that required several days of me like being on my office floor with all the papers. I've been working on it since 2016, really, the practices, but like literally, organizing everything, deciding how many pages of what and all that. And I can't do that. Like, I know that that's making the biggest impact and the best use of my time, because we sold out more than half of them within the first week without even, with very little promotion. It wasn't like a launch particularly. It was like, hey, I did this thing. And if I had been doing, like, if I'm all caught up in like fixing the terms and conditions on our website and like setting up Facebook ads and an evergreen funnel, there's nothing to sell. Like, we sell my ideas.
Yeah.
And so if I don't have the space to be marinating in that stuff and thinking about it and working on it with my high level mastermind and stuff like that, then there's no business. And I think that we're in a time where, okay, so so 2008 was really the early waves of internet marketing. And now we're in a time now 11 years later where we are being called to innovate and do new things and not use all the old models. Cause for some people, those aren't working anymore. And I know for me, like we cannot innovate from a place of overly busy and overly booked. So I don't think I'm really answering your question, but that is what, like, basically I don't think that there was like particularly a moment where I knew what my zone of genius was. I think I have an exercise in my book, Do Less, where, and in Origin, my membership, where you identify your 80-20, the 20% of activities that get you 80% of your results in your work and in your life. You can do it for your life too. And it's just like so obvious when I did the exercise what my 20% was. And it's pretty obvious for everyone. It's just like right there on paper. And then you're like, well, then I have no business doing the other things. So who else is going to do them? Or do they need to be done at all?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you feel excited about 2020?
Yes.
Why?
Okay, well, a lot of things. One, it's not overscheduled. We have so much space in 2020. So like anything's possible. So that's really fun. I used to really pride myself on having like my entire calendar all mapped out a year in advance. And while we certainly have some things on the calendar and we have a pretty good idea of what's happening now and here and there, there's a lot of open space. Mm-hmm. And I love that because there's possibility in that. I don't think I could possibly know what's going to be cooking for me a year out from now. And so I like having the spaciousness of it. And I'm excited to go deeper on the things that have already been created. I think I've had a tendency and almost an addiction to creating new things. And I'm really working on rewiring myself so that my default is to lean in on the things that have already been created, as opposed to being constantly in creation mode, because ultimately that's kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much of your business life influences you as a mother, or vice versa?
They're really the same. I mean, I'm teaching women how to source their best creativity, their highest form of themselves from the truth of who they are, from their bodies, from embodiment. And so for me as a mother, like, I can't think of anything more important to pass along to my daughters than how right their bodies are, and how powerful they are as women. And so I feel like I do the same thing all day, whether it's with my kids or with my clients or with my members.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, our mothers have a huge on us, but I'm curious how much you recognise that the knowledge of your own power has come from your upbringing versus that your own entrepreneurial journey and what happened after you left the nest.
I really feel like I've been in an evolution with that in particular. I feel so like, I really feel like in the last year after having my second daughter, I get how I'm next in the lineage, how we all are next in the lineage, right? Where we all stand on the shoulders of the women who have come before us. And I think in the past, I felt like I had to prove myself or somehow show my worth as separate. And I can see how that was a lot of wasted time and energy on my part, and how simply embracing that this is my lineage and this is who I am. Like, my grandmother was a revolutionary. Her mother was a revolutionary. My mother was a revolutionary. And I'm just like carrying the baton, and I'm so thrilled to be here doing it.
That gives me goosebumps. Can you talk to me about ritual? And because I really associate, and I'm not even sure why, but I associate you with ritual. So can you talk to me a little bit about that and what it means to you in your life and why it's so important?
I just think that's so funny, and I'll tell you why. Because my mom loves rituals, and she has like a whole, like, she put on a special outfit, and she has like a whole setup that she does, and like is with the feathers and the stones and the candles and the objects and all this stuff. And I think that like, I still have resistance to all of that, because like growing up, I was just like, oh my God, you're so weird. So I do love a good ritual. I am not the one who's gonna like set up a super complicated thing. Like, I do rituals light. So my rituals are very do less. It's like, what is the minimum amount of things that what are the minimum amount of steps and ingredients that I need to get the maximum result? And the maximum result is really that feeling of intentionality and having created sacred space and a moment of mindfulness. So I'm a huge believer that we make up our own rituals. Any ritual that anyone has been doing, even if it's been for thousands of years, somebody made up at some point. So I think we can get like a really, that especially around religion, right? Like, this is the way it's done and this is right. And I'm like, some guy just decided to do it that way. You can just do it differently. Like, it literally doesn't matter what you do. It's about pausing. It's about intentionality. It's about taking a moment to choose something new, or to acknowledge something, or to sanctify something. And we can do that however we want. And I think it's about the way that feels good and feels resonant to us. So, but like simple ritual, like the bedtime rituals with my kids, for example, I'm such a huge believer in that, because it creates a sense of calm and safety in all of us.
Yes. I feel like I've seen you talking about the moon, and maybe that's why I'm like, you're all about rituals.
Totally. And I'm always paying attention to what phase the moon is in. And I do a very simple new moon desire practice, where I just sit in bed and I write in my new moon desire journal.
Yeah.
And then full moon, I just think about throughout the day what I want to let go of. But that's what I mean by rituals light. I'm very like.
So, on a scale of 1 to woo, how woo are you? Would you kind of like?
I'm very woo. I'm like 100. I'm heavily woo. However, I will say I'm very practical woo And also I love research.
Okay.
So I'm pretty like, I have done some, you name the workshop, I have taken it. I like out there, very out there. I also have a really good sense of humor about it though. Like I do not take my woo particularly seriously, even though it's a super important part of my life.
What's the most woo thing that you've done?
Oh my gosh. I did the weirdest retreat. I don't know if it's the most woo thing I've ever done, but I did the weirdest retreat in Mount Shasta with this energy healer guy. It was like me and 30 of my friends in the woods for a week doing the most bizarre, like at one point he had us wearing tinfoil on our heads to like tap into some frequency of, it was like, even that I left. I was like, no, I can't with this. We've gone too far. I can't with the tinfoil. I went to bed. But hey, I'll do it. I'll try it.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's interesting. The reason I asked you that is just when you said that somebody's made it up. At some point, somebody's made it up. And I was talking about this in relation to co-creation and co-creating your reality the other day. And I think that there's a lot of dogma, like, unless you do it like this, then the universe is going to be annoyed and the universe is going to say no. And it's like, the universe doesn't care. Like, all we care about is how you feel and the intention behind how you feel. And there are 1,000,001 different strategies that will all help raise your vibe, will all help raise your frequency so you feel good. And that's the place that you become. It's at that point, there's the point of attraction. That's where you become magnetic.
Yes.
How much have you ever felt like this stuff does not work?
Like
where
woo?
Yeah, like where you've been intentional and you wanted to create something and it hasn't happened and you felt like you've done all of the things.
Yes, I have. And in cases like those, I just really trust that my intellect and my ego thinks that there is something that I should be having that is not ultimately what's the best for my soul's evolution. So I'm very like, I really trust that everything is working out.
Yeah.
I really do. Although the birth of my first daughter, I had hired an ecstatic birth coach. I had done the visualizations. I read all the books. I watched all the documentaries. I went to the classes. Like I was prepared to have a beautiful, ecstatic home birth.
Yeah.
And I've done everything that you could possibly do to prepare for that. And I ended up needing to transfer to the hospital in an ambulance and have an emergency C-section when I was 10 centimeters dilated. So she was like coming out. And that period of time, that first few weeks, was definitely a period of deep surrender of like, I literally did everything you could possibly imagine. And I also was raised in a really birth positive household. Like, and I just had to realize,
the universe.
yeah, it's, like we are not in control. And that has been a continued lesson of motherhood for me, that like, I'm not in charge.
Yeah. It's interesting because my background is hypnobirthing. So I created through B School, actually, I came up with the idea for the Calm Birth School. And one of the lessons is, this is about creating a positive experience regardless of which way it goes, because there are no guarantees. And I think especially in birth and those early stages, it's really important to go in with that intention that it's going to be positive regardless. Yeah. Because when you hold on to anything really tightly and you feel it slip through your fingers, there's a huge amount of grief that comes with that. And I think that as you're going into motherhood, there's also grief for your old self that often people don't talk about. And so it's, whilst it can be incredible and uplifting and you can be totally in love with this new human being. It can also be isolating and frightening and like, shit, what's going to happen next? And I think taking that restriction or just softening the desire for what it's supposed to look like is really important for, birth professionals. I was going to say us, I'm not a birth professional anymore, but that's really important with the message.
Well, and I think that applies to certainly birth, but it applies to our lives. I mean, I wrote the list, right? Like when I wanted to attract my man, I made the list of all the things, right? And then I met Mike, and I had like a total anxiety situation because he wasn't what I had expected. And it took me a long time. Like he was sure, like he knew within 5 days that he was going to marry me. And it took me, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long, but it took me months and a lot of anxiety because it didn't look the way I had written down.
Yeah. There are infinite possibilities. And the idea that our tiny brains can understand all of the infinite possibilities is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we are living in the illusion that we are in control. And that releasing the steering wheel, I think, is one of the hardest things that we, as any human being, have to do.
Yeah.
But that's layered when you're in business and you think that you have to be in the driving seat or it's all going to fall to pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I think like internet marketing is such a powerful place to practice our manifesting because there is like a lot of energetics going on in terms of what are people attracted to and what are they repelled by. And I really do believe the more we can be in feeling good, the more we prioritize feeling good and pleasure and bliss and being in that space, the more magnetic we are, regardless of how well dialed in our funnels are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, I think, though, when you don't have that background and foundation in mindset.
It's like you need to take the foundations and then you can. Yes, I completely agree.
Because I think as well that that's what people are selling. People sell the magic bullet. People sell the funnel. People sell this is the thing. This is the thing. This is the thing, and it's never the thing.
I know, and that's what I love about B School is that there's no like magic bullet. It's the fundamentals. Like you need to understand the psychology of marketing, and then you can apply it to anything.
So talk to me about how you said it. The internet marketing world is changing. And I feel that one, that's part of my own evolution personally. I recognize that. But two, what is that going to look like in your business? What do you think? You said innovation, but what does that mean? Like, how are you planning on innovating?
Well, I'm thinking about what we're doing in 2020, and I'm thinking about launch models and launch formulas and thinking about like, I know that the 3-part video series works and I know webinars work and challenges and, all the things, right? Like we've done them. But I just want to do what feels good. And so I am coming from this from the perspective, like you said, I've been at this since 2010. Yeah, since 2010. Actually, I did my first affiliate promo, I think in 2009.
Okay.
Before I even had a website. So I did it through my Gmail account. And it really worked. It worked great. It was for Marie. It was the first time she ever launched B School. So I'm like an elder.
Yeah.
Really, as far as internet marketing goes. And so 9 years in, 10 years in, whatever it's been, I've done that. I definitely have put in the time to understand your ideal customer avatar, to understand copywriting, to understand those things. Yeah. But I have to tell you, I've been going back to like, how did it feel in 2010 when I just got started? Like, what was the spark? And the spark was like just being myself and sharing what I was enthusiastic about. And it turns out that is still what I'm doing. Like, it was just, when I didn't know all the strategy, when I didn't have so much information, there was a purity of the essence of enthusiasm that created magnetism. And so that's really where I am like, how can I pretend that I don't know all the strategies and do what actually feels good and what feels authentic. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to teach webinars, because I totally am. I also love doing them. It doesn't mean I'm not going to have an email follow-up sequence. I'm going to do all those things.
Yeah.
But like, I'm such a big believer that how we do things and how we feel while we're doing them is far more important than what we're doing.
100%. I think that's where ignorance is bliss. That's what I'm hearing. You know, the naivety of youth. It's like, let's jump back in there. And I think that also that naivety is where the disruption comes from.
Yes, totally. Yeah, just like, if anything were possible, how would I launch this thing? And to be honest, our Do Less planner was such a great example. It, like, there were some logistical things that weren't coming together and weren't coming together and weren't coming together. And then finally it all came together at like 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. And I just said, F it, like, let's just send the email and see what happens.
Yeah.
Literally the worst time to launch something is 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. But the sales were like, it was like an avalanche of sales. And it was such a great reminder of when the enthusiasm is there and the belief is there, and you have created something that you know your audience wants, they buy it regardless.
Can we talk about money? How do you feel? Obviously, you've written a book about it, but how do you feel? What's your relationship with money like now?
So this past year has been a very profound year. So with my husband's illness and the new baby in 2018, it really knocked us on our asses in terms of a reckoning for how we were running our business and how we were running our life. And we needed to scale back in a major way because we lost our key player for 9 months. Well, half of the key player, but I was on maternity leave for 5 of those months. So it was a bumpy year. And so in that simplification process, we simplified our team, we simplified a lot of our expenses, and we started using a system called Profit First, integrated with the money love work, the emotional and energetic work. And for the first, like, it's really amazing. We with that system and with that mindset, and then our own stuff that we've been practicing for years, we've created so much space financially, just like having so much more money in the bank and finally breaking the habit of making more money and then spending as much as not ever as much. I mean, we've always had savings, but like we just created a lot of space this year. And so I would say my relationship with money is the best it's ever been. And it's also such a great reminder that, like, I wrote a book about this in 2013. So that was 6 years ago that came out. Our relationship with money is continuing to evolve. And I really do believe, just like this can be with marriage or with partnership, that the better it gets, and we can continue to learn and to grow. And it never ends. Like, there's never a moment where we're like, oh, this is it, I'm perfect with this forever. And we get to keep going deeper and diving deeper. And so I'm always reading books on money. I'm always learning. It's a fascinating topic, and I don't think it ever ends.
What are the money question? What are your money goals for 2020?
Oh, well, I will tell you, we're not doing we do a 1 week of year-end review and annual planning. And that's not happening for a couple of weeks. So I don't know yet what my financial goals are for 2020, like in terms of what we're writing down on paper. But I will say I want to continue this spaciousness. Like, we have, for the first time in a very long time, or maybe possibly for the first time ever, possibly since college, like, the end of the year doesn't feel like this race. I just don't have that much I'm doing. It's so spacious. And the way we handled our money this year created that, where I have 3 more working weeks of the year, and then 3 weeks, we're taking 2 weeks completely off as a company, and 1 week that Mike and I aren't working because we're doing our year-end review and annual planning. And I just want to keep that space and grow it, so that we can take a month off next summer as a family, so that we can really, and that's financial, but it's not even really a financial goal. We've made enough money to do that. It's a logistical goal. So it's a systems and spaciousness goal, Because ultimately for a lot of folks, yes, financially you need the money to be able to do these things, but it's more about boundaries for us to just decide ahead of time and then say, okay, well, if this is our priority, what's going to need to happen? What needs to be delegated? What are we not going to do in order to make this possible? Because everything we decide to do, a lot of other things need to not happen in order to make that happen. So, I've said no to a ton of things towards the end of the year because I wanted December to be spacious.
What do you think about the mothers to be in the audience who are putting off motherhood because they're worried that they can't do business and motherhood together?
Well, I would really recommend starting to gather your examples. So, like really just if it's Susie, if it's whoever your people are, put them up on a vision board, like look at yours, to find them on Instagram, the people, the women who inspire you, who you get the feeling like, you know what, I want some elements of how she's doing this, because I really believe that the fastest way to change a belief that's not serving you is to find examples that prove it wrong. And just put your attention on those examples. That's what I did. I felt like I did that for marriage, actually. I felt like I didn't have any examples of really powerful women in successful romantic relationships. And I realized I was talking about that a lot with my girlfriends. And I said, well, if that's what I want, I need to stop talking about the fact that nobody has it. And I need to find the people who have it and then get around them. And so that's what I did. And very shortly after that, I met my husband.
I love that. And finally, can we just talk about impact? When you think about the impact that you individually want to make, and then you as a company, what does that look like?
So I'm really here to guide women to access their full creative and career potential while doing less. So making more money without stress, or with less stress. I think there's always going to be a little making more money, less stress. So, my goal is I want women to double their income and be working half the amount of time. I mean, and if you use the principles that I teach, like that's what happens. That's what happened to me. And yes, we all need to remain diligent because the rest of the culture is going a totally different way. So it's not like set it and forget it, right? We use these practices, we work on our mindset. It's a daily practice forever. But that's really the impact, to free up women's time so that we are detaching ourselves from the economic systems that keep us on the hamster wheel, which really keep our power at bay. And if you can detach from that and really get yourself in a place of freedom, of creativity, and then you tap into your creative potential, we become absolutely unstoppable.
Oh, that feels like the perfect place to end. Thank you so, so much. Can you please tell my lovely people where they can find you hanging out on social media, your website?
Absolutely. So the best place to find me is at katenorthrup.com. I have there a weekly do less planner that you can download to check out for free, like the whole system, a little cheat sheet of how to organize your time so you can make twice as much and work half the amount. And then my place for social media that I hang out on the most is Instagram. And of course, you can get my books anywhere books are sold.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Susie.